Thanks for that introduction, Barry. She also taught me not to speak until spoken to, so I appreciate it. So what would I like to learn more about student achievement and accomplishment is intent and motivation. So in a course, for instance, you're in a course because it's part of your major. Maybe you're in there to fulfill a distribution requirement. Maybe you're in there for pass-fail. You just want exposure to a new discipline or some new ideas. Maybe you want to take something very specific from that course and apply it somewhere else. In each one of these cases, you're in there with a different motivation, maybe with a different intent, right? And so the grade that we hand out, maybe that means something to you, maybe it doesn't. Maybe pushing for a high grade in that class is a strong motivator for you, maybe it's not, right? At the level of a major then, so moving beyond grades, so why did you choose this major that you chose? Did you have it in mind as part of a means to an end, a final, to get to med school, to get to graduate school, to get to a particular industry? Was it just kind of the path of least resistance? Was it something that was the most challenging major for you? Why are you in here? And the reasons or the motivation that you're choosing that major are also shaping the courses that you take, right, and the path that you take to the university. And kind of then at the highest level for the university is, why are you at the university? Is it to get a major and leave? Is it to expand your horizons, to meet new people, to get new ideas that you hadn't heard before? Is it the social aspect, or the extracurricular aspect? Are you here to do those, and kind of in the grades and the coursework and the major and everything are kind of have a diminished importance? There are people that from across the spectrum that are all doing these things. So as a researcher in these working on these three aspects, I have a few examples out. So one in eCoach that Barry talked about briefly, one of the things we like to do is identify students that are performing not as well as we expected, worse than expected, let's say, in terms of their grades. So they take an exam and we expect them to do better on the exam than they did. Okay, well, why was that? And then, we can ask the question why, but really what we do is we say, okay, you did worse than we expected. Okay, we identify you as someone that we would like to help. But we often don't know what the motivation was or what the intent was for the student taking the course. And that could have an impact on their grade, right? So you can deploy help to a person that doesn't want it or doesn't need it, right? And that's fine. But that depends on knowing their motivation and intent. Another example on what I'd say the major scale, so the degree scale, is we work with learning communities on campus. So, this doesn't exist, but as an example, say there's a stats learning community, a statistics learning community whose intent or whose goal is to help students who want statistics degrees to get those degrees, right? So if we want to help that department understand if what they're doing, if they're successful in what they're doing and helping students to get degrees that wouldn't otherwise get them, we need to identify a control sample on campus, control students on campus whose intent is to get a statistics degree, right, to get a statistics degree and then to ask if they got degrees later. And these students are specifically students that aren't in the learning community. So we have to identify these students, right? And Michigan is unusual in the sense that you get to admitted to a college in most cases, right? And now only by your sophomore year do you actually declare a major, right? You come out and say, yes, I'm a statistics person. And we don't typically do that at Michigan. So we have to infer from maybe your course list or maybe from surveys whether you intended to be a statistics person, right, to get a statistics degree. And from a standpoint of a researcher, this is important to define this sample, right, so we have something to compare to. Right, so we have something to compare to. So what are we doing about this now? So we have, what I said before is saying we're looking at trying to identify intent and motivation without knowing, without having someone telling us every second, yes, I still want to do this major, I still want to do this major, right? We can't sample them every second. So what do? Well, we can try to infer from course distributions, right? We can also look at surveys that are in the data warehouse. Most of the work we do is based on things that are in LARC, right? So in the data warehouse. So there are surveys in there. So college entrance surveys, Common App surveys. There are teaching evaluations that students fill out. And these are all great. There's some measure, there's some indication at some point of somebody's motivation. But the surveys, themselves, we've tried to put those to use to infer somebody's intent. What is it that you mean that you want to do here in this course or in this degree? And the surveys themselves, they can evolve over time. The students that take the survey or do the teaching evaluation can be a biased subset, right? So it kind of makes inference to other groups of students difficult, right? And the students themselves, as I said before, the students themselves change over time. Their intents change. They get influenced by different factors over the course of their career, and they make different decisions, right? And we can't, as I said before, we can't resample them over and over and over. So one of the big things I'd like to know is how can we do this? How can we learn more about what our students are intending to do? And enter into a conversation with them about, here's what we think is important for your learning. What do you think is important for your learning? What do you think your goals ought to be? For them to identify these questions, and it's a big university. There are many students. Can we have a conversation with each student about what they want to do and what they want to get out of this? Well, it's difficult, right? But it's kind of a goal I feel like it'd be interesting to push toward. And that's all I had to say.